As a kid, what was your worst crap, my parents are going to kill me moment? In high school I used to run our school's planetarium. It wasn't used anymore, and I loved astronomy, so it became my room. I kept my books in there, PlayStation, everything. When I first began using it, it was full of old computers that the school had been leasing but didn't return yet. A buddy and I decided to try to get one up and running so we could run astronomy programs off it, but they were all crap. One afternoon, a faculty member brought in the most beautiful computer. It was faster than any other one in the school, and we knew it would be perfect for our programs. We spent that afternoon doing a complete wipe of it and installing a new OS and all the programs we wanted. A day or two goes by and the faculty member returns. She tells us that that particular computer was not supposed to come in here. It belonged to blind, mentally challenged student and had $10,000 worth of programs formatted particularly for him. We told her we'd look for it and send it back. At this point we're both thinking our lives are over, and I knew for sure my mom was going to kill me. We ended up wiping it again, saying that it was placed on some magnetic rocks that were in the planetarium, and sending it back to them. We never heard anything more. I graduated and never went back. Everything turned out better than expected. The overarching theme I'm getting here is that it really wasn't that big of a deal, and they probably fixed it. Thanks for giving my conscience some rest, guys. I crashed their cars, both of them, a little bit. When I was about 12, I was moving my dad's truck so it wouldn't block my basketball hoop. I knew how to drive just fine, so my parents were okay with me doing that. I made a critical error though. While backing the truck into a spot behind my mom's SUV, I didn't realize the tailgate was down. As I'm backing, I hear a huge crunch and the truck stops. I'm fricked. I got out to assess the damage, and the truck is fine. The SUV, 1998 Land Cruiser, had a very uniform crease along the lift gate. I said nothing. It was so perfect that nobody ever noticed, even when we traded the car in 5 years later. When I was about 9 years old, my mom went out and left my sister and I at home with our dad. He was an extremely heavy sleeper, so whenever he was our sole guardian, we knew we had our run of the house after about 10 PM. On this particular evening, my mom had left her makeup on the bathroom counter. This was too tempting for me. I gathered my tools and went to work on my sleeping father. After a few minutes of carefully applying all of my 9-year-old boy makeup expertise, I moved on and forgot about it. Fast forward. Apparently dad slept through his alarm the next day and rushed out of the house to work without stopping in the bathroom. Dad was a truck driver and not much of a fan of practical jokes. I can still remember when he got home. He opened the front door and just stared at me, not moving, not speaking. It was the one and only time growing up that I was genuinely afraid of my dad. I thought, crap, he's gonna kill me. TLDR. I put makeup on my sleeping father. He woke up late and wore said makeup to work. Mum asked me to defrost the freezer, which also involved scraping the ice off the inside. For some reason I thought a screwdriver was the most appropriate tool and ended up poking a hole in it. She wasn't very pleased. The new one cost £350. I get my screwdrivers for $20. When I was in grade 8 this girl kept sending me love notes as a joke because her boyfriend thought it'd be funny for some stupid reason. Usually I just crumpled them up and threw them away, but one day I snapped and sent one back saying go suck on BF's name, S balls. She saw it, laughed, and threw it on the ground. Of course the most hard-butt teacher finds that note and starts investigating about who wrote it. She found out it was me just as school was over, so she told me to come see her the next morning. That was the worst 16 hours of my life. I just knew that she was going to yell until I started bleeding from my ears, then call my parents who would kill me right there and there. I went to school the next day, and turns out she forgot, and the girl stopped sending me notes too, so everything went better than expected. You're one lucky duck, mate. I threw a Friday night party in grade 10 while my parents were away for the weekend. I was a pretty obedient kid up to that point, so my parents trusted me. Turned out to be a pretty awesome party with a bunch of good people. As expected, people became quite intoxicated and things got out of hand. One guy fell down the stairs and went headfirst through the drywall and passed out. This left a basketball-sized hole in the drywall and I started freaking out. My friends and I spent all day Saturday replacing the drywall and painting over the hole. I told my parents 5 years later over Christmas dinner and everyone was in tears. So all in all it ended as a pretty good story. The fact that you and your high school age friends banded together to repair the wall to the point where your parents couldn't tell the difference is amazing. My parents were pretty tough on me. I never partied, drank, went out with friends, nothing. Grades were everything to my parents and so was my getting into college. When I was a sophomore in high school I thought I was going to get a C overall in biology and I was freaking out about it for 2 weeks. I was going to bed crying every night because I was afraid of my parents' reaction. I finally told my mom that I thought my final grade was going to be a C before she could open my report card that we got in the mail. She said something like, "Well, I guess you can forget about college then." Turns out I got a B. As a teen I was surprised I got off so easy, no yelling or anything before the report card was opened. As an adult I am still pissed off by what she said. I keep getting asked, so no, I am not Asian. When I was 10 I was pretty small and couldn't get to the bathroom mirror which was above the sink, so I had the great idea to stand on the toilet and lean forward so I could see myself in the mirror. When I stood on the toilet and leaned forward the toilet seat brackets broke and I fell down on the floor along with the toilet seat. I didn't know how to explain it so I just put the seat back on the toilet and left like nothing had happened. They soon found out. They were quite angry. I love how when your kid just putting it back and walking away is somehow the best course of action. It makes so much sense. Out of sight, out of mind. As a kid, I used to take huge shoots, clog the toilet, panic then proceed to leave it there for someone else to find. Dad comes home and I am all, I don't know who did that, certainly not me. When I was in 5th grade I was playing with matches in the bathroom with a friend. We lit the toilet paper on fire and it caught the paint on the wall on fire. By the time we got it out a nice portion of the wall was burned. I remember looking at it before we ran out and thinking frick. Ended up getting busted. It was bad. I think the worst part of the punishment was my dad dragging me to different hospitals to see patients at all the burn units. He made me stay longer if there were burnt kids. I remember hating him for it, but as I look back and realize I have a healthy respect and awareness of all things that burn, I realize it was quality parenting. In case it isn't clear, we were in the bathroom at school. When I was in middle school we had one of those projects where you had to build a mini bridge. You started out with just the basic sticks and used push pins, the ones with the little colored balls on the end, then glued them together. I took mine home in a shoebox and immediately laid it on the floor because I was so over it. Later in the week my little sister was running through the house and ran into my room. All we heard were horrible screams coming from my room. We went in and she was on the floor with like 50 of those pins in her foot. Balls deep, I suppose you would say. She had stepped on the box so hard that many of them had actually bent inside of her foot. My dad took them all out and I can't remember any other time that I was in so much trouble. Except for the other time that she had to wear a heart monitor and I made her run laps around the yard to throw off the machine. I was a mean frick, I know. The pins thing wasn't your fault. She's the one who stepped on the box. I'd say the time I was caught setting off fireworks in school. Dang, my parents were pee when they came home from work. Fireworks are the child devil's plaything. When I was 14 I rebelled against my parents making me go to an activity involving my sisters that had nothing to do with me. Lasted sometimes between 18 to 20 hours. I had absolutely no interest in, and took place every single weekend in the summer. Nothing against my sisters, but it was pure torture for me. Of course, my mother's answer for everything was a beating. This would have been a very rare thing to occur in front of my dad. As she came towards me with that belt that I had hated for as long as I remember, I realized for the first time that I was looking down at her. I was bigger than her now. I decided right there that she was never going to beat on me again. I told her that and I open-handed knocked her off her feet. Her eyes were big as saucers when she hit the floor. Then I thought I was going to die. My dad gave me a spanking, the only one I ever remember getting from him. I guess he felt that he had to do something. It was so mild compared to what my mother dealt out that it was almost a joke, but I didn't tell dad that. I survived and my mother never hit me again, although she continued to intimidate me in other ways until I left home a couple of years later. When I was like 12, my younger brother, 1 year younger, and I always had fights over stupid crap. It would start with pushes and slaps, but it always turned into really nasty fist fights until one of us started crying or one held still the other until we chilled out. One time we were left alone in the house while our parents and sisters went to the city. We had a brutal fight in our room. My brother ended up crying, so I left him and started to walk out the room. Then I hear a loud snap noise behind me. I turn around and I see my brother standing in the other side of the room with his arm extended. And behind me on the wall 2 big blood-like red stains with the size of adult hands. Red drops all over my bed and pieces of 2 brand new red gel ink pens. We didn't say nothing. We just knew what the other was thinking. Mom is gonna kill us. We ran downstairs to get rags, soap, plastic bags, a scrub. We tried to clean the wall stains. Obviously we made it worse. Now we had a reddish pinkish mess on our wall. He told me he could fix it and I told him I would change the bed sheets. So I take them off and go downstairs to the laundry, put them in the wash machine and turn it on. We already knew how to use it in case mom wasn't home. I wait there until they're ready and I get 2 pink bed sheets. I run outside into our tree house and hide them in the bottom of a toys and junk box. I run back into the house and start looking for our bed sheets. Our mother always made matching bed sheets for us, so I had to find a pair for me and one for my brother. I finally found them. Run upstairs and I see my brother without shirt nor pants with his arms full of plaster. Our walls were plain white with a super glossy smooth layer of plaster. So his great idea was to scratch the red stains with a scraper and then try to cover the scratches with plaster like nobody would notice. It's too late to make another plan. I changed the bed sheets of our beds and helped him with the plaster. It looked horrible, like if a white warp hole made of toothpaste was starting to flush down our wall. My parents are about to arrive. I tell him to go and take a shower, and I start moving our beds and the old dressing table and mirror that was in our room. It all looks really awkward, but now the back of my bed support covers the crap we did. My parents arrive while I'm taking a bath. My mom immediately asked us what happened with our room. We just said we were playing to make forts and needed some space in the room. To this day, our beds are still like that in our parents' house. We never said a word about it. TLDR. A kid's fight ends up with red gel ink on the wall making the room look like a crime scene. Home improvement mode. Engaged. Nailed it. 12 years later mom still doesn't know. Or does she? She probably knows. Still I'm a kid, but in 1st grade I broke a spoon. I don't know why I was scared. We had a crap ton of spoons. My little 6-year-old brain couldn't imagine what would happen because I broke that freaking spoon. I thought I would have to run away or something. Turns out my parents didn't give a frick. The thought process of you imagining that you would be getting in trouble would be hilarious. When I exploded the microwave, for the 2nd time, my parents sent me and my best friend to my room, which in hindsight was not the smartest thing of them to do. We just kept messing around. I didn't know you guys were that friendly with each other. Got in a fight at school. I was usually a pretty good student, so when I got my first, and only, after school detention cleaning the gyms, I thought my parents were going to freak. Turns out they loved it and bought me pizza, haha. Sister and I were doing the dishes and started flicking water at each other. Ended in a full-blown, house-wide water fight. At some point we stopped and realized what we just did. My boyfriend's story is worse. Better. He has 8 siblings and they started a house-wide tomato fight. They got in a lot more trouble. Had a spaghetti fight with my sister. When mom came back into the room, we acted like nothing had happened. Quietly eating our dinner, with spaghetti on the walls, our hair, the ceiling. I don't remember the rest of that night. When I was 5 I made my family homeless. I was a serious pyro when I was a young boy. I have 3 sisters, I am a guy, and I'm the youngest. So I was picked on a lot by them. One day in particular I was especially mad at my oldest sister. My mother and sisters all went into the living room to watch television and I plotted my revenge. I thought of all of the things she loved and remembered her new cheerleading pom-poms and outfit. I smiled as I knew what had to be done. I crept into our kitchen and climbed on the counter to get the matches out of the top cabinet. Crappy hiding place. Then I slipped down the hall to my sister's room. In the corner she had all of her cheerleading stuff laid out. So I took the liberty of burning the pom-poms. At first they started melting and then they flared up and caught fire. I was very satisfied with myself. I remember looking into the mirror she had on her wall and laughing like a maniac. Like the Joker. Then out of the corner of my eye I see a huge flame. I realize the fire is getting out of control. I panicked, threw the matches in the fire to destroy evidence, and darted out of the room. I closed the door behind me. I walked down the hall freaking out inside and thinking of a way to explain that the house was on fire. So I decided to do what anyone would do, act like it wasn't me. I walked into the living room and cuddled up to my mom and told her I loved her, which made her suspicious since I was obviously acting odd. Then smoke started billowing from the hall. My mom gets up and walks to my sister's room and opens the door. I think she was in shock because she saw the smoke and got all wide-eyed. Smoke, tons of smoke. It pours out of the room and she screams while jumping up in the air and picks all 4 of her kids up and rushes them out of the house. She ran back in to get her purse and valuables. We were freaking out. The fire department showed up and put out the fire. My mother didn't say a word to me. My dad was at work about 30 minutes away and I knew she waiting for him to deal with me. We went to my grandma's house in the meantime. I was worried sick and thinking of how my dad would decide to kill me. Then he showed up. I heard him pull in and I ran to the window and watched as he grabbed a stick out of the back of his truck. My grandma asked, "I wonder what that's for." I knew. It was for my butt. I ran and hid under my grandma's bed. My dad walks in. It was like a horror movie. All I could see was his feet as he stood there. Time stood still. All he said was, "Come out, boy." I slowly crawled from under the bed and he was quiet. He then proceeded to beat my butt. Everything that we saved from the fire was put in storage. A week later someone broke in and stole everything except our photo albums. I literally made my family lose almost everything. TLDR. Burned my house down when I was 5 and what was saved from the fire was stolen from storage a week later. I wonder what that's for. Made me laugh out loud. Your grandma is awesome. I was about 10 and it was Christmas Day around 6 PM. Brand new we just got it that morning. Brand new flat screen TV. Gift from mom to dad. Plasma TV. Expensive back then. Lanyards are for lame people. Wii bowling. TV has spiderweb cracks and is hissing as the gases inside escape. Turn TV off. Attempt to take it off the stand to hide it. It falls and makes a huge noise, breaks even more dramatically. Glass on floor. Grab Wii and run to room. Apology is not an option. Load BB gun. Hide behind bed. Pointing BB gun at door. Second Amendment. Castle Doctrine. Alamo. I hear the scream of a man who has lost his beautiful new flat screen and just stepped on glass all at once. He opens the door. I love him. So of course I don't shoot him. Because I'm a stupid kid. I freeze in place. Don't try to hide that I was gonna shoot him in the knee with a BB gun and escape. Rage. Tackled. Disarmed. Regret lack of fortification. Serious talk. Loss of pellet gun. Therapy. He still talks to me, loves me, forgives me for some reason. Feels like an idiot still to this day. That's freaking hilarious. Well, this wasn't my parents, but when I was maybe 10 I was over at a friend's house in late fall. We were hanging out in the hayloft to the family's barn and we found a chain laying on the floor beneath small drifts of loose hay. So as 10-year-old boys like to do, we began taking turns swinging it around and smashing it off things. At one point my friend takes the chain and walks over to one of the windows and smashes the glass out with it. He then hands it to me and points to the other one. So I smashed the glass out of that one. Together we smashed the glass out of all of the windows in the barn. My friend told me not to tell, but I felt awful. When we went inside and his mother asked us what we did, I told her. She exploded at my friend, yelling about keeping the cows warm in the winter and how expensive glass was. He got grounded for about a month and I had to go home early. I think she just assumed it was all his fault because my parents never said anything to me. He was a weird kid. TLDR. Smashed windows in barn with friend. Friend gets hit by the train, I escape. Okay, so when I was about 13 years old, I was super into P and well downloaded some sort of page 2P client like Lemua to get my fix. Well, one night when my mom was gone and it was just my dad and I hear my dad yell for me from where the computer was at. I come downstairs and he's like, "Is this yours?" and I just nod yes in return. Well, then my dad proceeds to tell me I'm not mad at you for looking a P. It's totally normal for your age, but you can't be downloading 13, 14, and 15-year-old P on here. I was like, oh crap, I didn't even think about that. They totally wouldn't believe you if the cops came knocking. So yeah, I was downloading P of girls in my age range. Well, because I was that age and didn't even give a second thought as to how much crap my dad would have gotten in on my behalf. We haven't spoke of it to this day and I'm 28 now, haha. I came home stoned as frick and when I entered the kitchen I saw a bag of cookies one of my parents did for some friends being really hungry. I thought nobody would notice if I eat some of them. I accidentally destroyed the bag and half of the cookies landed on the ground. This happened 2 hours ago. I don't even have cookies in my house but I'm stoned and I'm afraid that this is gonna happen to me. When I couldn't undo the knot I made to hogtie my little brother, I had a brief moment of serious panic and then I dragged him into a corner, put tape over his mouth and threw a blanket over him. Mum got home and I went to the park. I can't remember if I told this story on Reddit a long time ago or not, and I'm too lazy to go look, so I'll just give the short version. When I was around 10, give or take a year, not sure, my parents got me a new babysitter to go out. For some strange reason, I didn't have too many repeat babysitters. Shrug. At 9 o'clock in the evening, she told me that it was my bedtime and made me get in bed and turn off the lights. This really peed me off, because it wasn't a school night and I had no such ridiculous bedtime. So I stayed awake, and an hour or so later, I sneaked out of my room and found the sitter asleep in my mom's rocking chair. So I did the only logical thing I could think of. I got a rope and managed to get her successfully tied to the chair before she woke up. Then, despite death threats and promises of horrible torture, I worked for a good half an hour getting her tied to where I was sure she couldn't escape. I then, like a true boss, went and hid in a closet and fell asleep. My parents eventually came home and released the babysitter, but couldn't find me for over an hour, by which time my dad had taken the sitter home, with her vowing to never sit for them again. The butt beating I got for that would have gotten Adrian Peterson suspended for life from the NFL, but it was worth it. My dad still loves to tell this story. TLDR. Tied up evil babysitter, got butt beat. One time my brothers and I misbehaved in church. My grandpa caught me rolling under the pews. Instead of punishing me there, he took me home and told me he'd deal with me when he got back from church. I concluded that this was the end of 8-year-old Simplicimen 6262, so I spent the next hour riding my bike for the last time, playing Mario for the last time, and saying goodbye to all my stuffed animals. When the time came near, I laid on my bed, said a quick prayer, and resolved to take my ultimate punishment as a man. I got a quick spanking, and a stern talking to, but I never misbehaved in church again. Your grandpa must have cast a big shadow. I know it must have been terrifying for you, but the idea of you getting your 8-year-old affairs in order made me smile a bit. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.